can.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
But hold on. I'm curious. Why is it?
So the question gets asked, what if the president wakes up tomorrow and all of a sudden says, I don't want any black people in the military anymore? This isn't just some ridiculous hypothetical trap, it's a deliberate one designed to shut down any rational discussion there could be. They want to equate an unchangeable characteristic like race that has no bearing on performance at all with a complicated medical and psychological reality that has direct impacts on military readiness. With all due respect, we will dismantle this debate, so comment from wherever you are watching and let's start.
Troops to serve hurts lethality and it hurts readiness. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no evidence of that. I think that, if that was the case, we've seen transgender people serving honorably for the last several years. And what has changed between now and then? They've just woken up to a new administration who has a different outlook on their ability to serve. So I think that, if you talk to people who are serving on active duty alongside transgender troops, they're not making these complaints. The leaders in the military are not making these complaints. These are political complaints about military service. So I think that all of the courts that have looked at this issue and looked at it, have said there's nothing in fact to back up what the government is claiming here. In fact, the judges challenged them to produce evidence, and they couldn't produce any evidence. So I think it's a really dark day for our country where basically we're allowed to discriminate against a class of people.
Scott, if they can't produce evidence that this actually does, in fact, have an impact on readiness, how is this not then just discrimination?
Well, it's the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who, according to our Constitution, is the head of the military. Regardless of anyone's opinion or anybody's, whatever side you're on, whether you're for it or against it, at some juncture, the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he has and should have broad latitude to determine how the armed forces should be operated. And so I think that's what he's doing here. I think that's ultimately what the court said today, was that the president is the commander-in-chief, and we gotta respect that.
To her point, if there's not a downside, and it's been going on for years now, and I'm just presenting your argument to them.
Yeah.
What is the argument other than Trump, Hegseth just doesn't want trans people in the military?
Well, I think that the president, we'll ultimately see. I think that's why the court is allowing the president to move forward with this until it works itself through the court system. Maybe the Supreme Court will be the final arbiter here to say, yeah or nay, you can do this. But ultimately, I think the court is showcasing deference to the executive, saying that, look, you're the president, you're over the military. You do, for the most part, get to sort of dictate the standards of our military. And I don't really see how you can push back against that. Again, we'll see what happens in the court.
I can. I'm sorry, I can. What if the president wakes up tomorrow and says, I don't want any black people in the military? Do we give deference to him on that? Well, no, wait a second. It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous because you're discriminating against a group of people in a very similar way. No,
I knew you were going to say that, but
excuse me. Well, I'm glad you.
I'm curious. Why is it ridiculous? You just said the president should be the one who just decides.
Right.
So if he decides, he wakes up tomorrow and says, I think it's bad for morale, it's bad for cohesiveness, for there to be black people in the military, Latino people in the military, just in her hypothetical scenario, what's the difference between that and what we're seeing here?
Are you really going to go down this ridiculous?
I'm sorry.
This is ridiculous. It is a ridiculous argument.
Well, okay.
The president, what they've already the president and Secretary of Defense have an argument here. They believe that readiness and unit cohesion and overall operations of the military are impacted by this. That is their opinion, and that is the opinion of the commander-in-chief, who the Constitution gives broad latitude to run the armed forces. So that's their opinion. You're allowed to have one. You're allowed to have one. You're also allowed to run for president and become commander-in-chief yourself. But until you do, he's the commander-in-chief.
I have to just say, I didn't hear an answer to the hypothetical, right? I just didn't hear it.
So the panel completely ignores the only question that matters for our military, namely, does the policymaker fighting force weaker or stronger? And the Trump administration's position is very realistic, based on practical real-world facts and not some feelings. Gender dysphoria often requires lifelong medical care like hormone treatments that need constant access to medication and also constant monitoring. You can guarantee that on a submarine or forward operating base. So this isn't some kind of discrimination, it's about deployability. It's as simple as that. The military has always disqualified people for conditions that require complex ongoing care, like severe diabetes, for example, and a soldier who can't be deployed is a liability to the unit. As simple as that. And then there are surgeries which involve long recovery times that can take a service member out of action for months, or in the worst case even for years, and all while they take up a spot that could be filled with a warfighter who is actually ready to get to fight on a moment's notice. And the US military is not a social experiment or jobs program. It's a lethal fighting force designed for one purpose: to win our nation's wars. And prioritizing political ideology over the mission is a very, very dangerous game if it's played.
Of discrimination, according to the American Psychological Association, discrimination is the unfair or prejudicial treatment of people or groups based on characteristics such as race, gender, age, or sexual orientation. What is the difference between prohibiting certain groups like transgender people from serving versus, people based on their race or even their gender, frankly?
I personally think there's a difference, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will say...
Do you believe that race and... Are you saying that the quality of race and the quality of transgender are the same?
I'm just asking the question because I think you're making there's a distinction, but you're not explaining why.
No, I'm asking, you guys brought up the hypothetical. Are you arguing that someone's race is the same as someone choosing to become transgender?
But your argument, you've made the argument twice that the Commander-in-Chief's opinion is all that matters. You've said that twice now.
Well, under the Constitution, yes.
So if he wakes up tomorrow and says it's not okay to be gay or lesbian and serve, because that's his opinion, there's nothing to back that up. They meet the physical standards. They meet the intellectual standards. They have voluntarily decided to serve their country, to give their life for this country. So many of us don't have to. That it's the opinion without any basis in fact that's what matters more than the Constitution of equal rights and equal protection.
The other thing, or there's a few things that bothered me about this, and mostly it was the language of the policy, right? When you're reading at some of these words, transgender people as inherently untruthful, undisciplined, dishonorable. That's like a very weighty thing to say about people who are courageously deciding to protect this country. The other problem, Scott, is that it's never enough. It's bathrooms today. It's sports today. It's sports tomorrow. It's the military today.
No, it's also sports today, by the way.
Yeah, it is sports today. And
80% of Americans agree, by the way.
Oh, that's fine. And 80%, guess what? The majority sometimes is wrong. That also happens, right? Because the majority used to believe that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was somebody who was a threat, that somebody who was not a good American. The majority of people used to be against civil rights. Were they right? No, they weren't. And so the whole point is when you target one group, and inevitably that line moves to everybody else. And I'm not saying he's coming for black people tomorrow, but considering that this is a military or this is a leadership that is already using DEI as code word for black people already when it comes to the military, suddenly when you don't protect the most vulnerable, you wind up making it worse for everybody else that's in the marginalized community. You don't think trans people are vulnerable in this country?
So is it your position that the commander-in-chief should recruit people who you're describing as vulnerable into the lethal fighting force?
He should recruit people who want to serve and protect this country.
Scott Jennings perfectly exposed the massive hypocrisy in his opponent's argument. You cannot claim a group of people is very vulnerable and needs special protection and in the next breath argue they should be placed in the most violent and most psychologically brutal environment on the planet: combat. It makes zero sense. It's not compassionate to take individuals with higher statistical rates of depression and anxiety and put them in a job designed to break even the most mentally tough people on the planet. And the idea that Trump was just acting on a whim couldn't be further from reality. He is the commander-in-chief and it's his constitutional duty to assess any and all risks to the force. He and his military leaders concluded this policy posed a risk to unit cohesion and readiness. As simple as that, and you can't disagree. You can actually disagree, but you can't deny his authority to make such a call. In the end, it boils down to a very simple difference in vision. One side sees the military as the tool for social justice, and the other side, the Trump position, sees it for what it really is: a team of warriors whose job it is to be so effective and so lethal that no enemy ever dares to challenge us. As the narrator said, they'd rather recruit the dominant men and women who will go out there and kick some ass And in a real fight, one of these views keeps America safe, and the other one is a recipe for disaster. Clearly, I'm not supporting Trump, just logically breaking down this decision he made. Please let me know your opinion in the comments. See you soon.